Thanks for joining me here today on the Family Imprint Show. My name's Joanna Lynn, and I'm really glad you're here. I got an email just last week from one of my clients asking me a question that she wanted me to address on the show, so I thought I would bring it forward. The topic of the show, or the Coles Notes of what we're going to talk about, is that for any of us, how we show up in relationships, we're really only as needy in those relationships as our greatest unmet need. And what I mean by that is, if we had lots of unmet needs in our family of origin, guess how we show up in our intimate relationships? Well, her question goes something like this. As you know, Joanna, I'm a high-level professional. For all the times you've known me, I've been balanced, pretty grounded, and not much has kind of unearthed me. Well, these past few months, I feel like I've been on a roller coaster ride, and I just want to know how to get off. Well, the situation was she met somebody who turned her world upside down. It felt like such a click. They were just like magnets to each other. And it wasn't too long after that, I'm going to say 4 or 5 weeks in, that a few of those alarm bells started to go off. She noticed she felt different than she usually does, waiting around for his phone call, being very preoccupied around what he said and did he mean that and when will he call. So that the trueness of feeling like life got turned upside down is not just a saying or not an over exaggeration. She was feeling as if she was, in a way, losing a part of herself and really defaulting to what he wanted, what he thought, how much time he wanted to spend together. And all the while, it was driving her crazy. Now, by the time this email came in and where we're going to be exploring today, about 3 months had gone by. And now she's in a bit of a depleted place. There's been so much worrying, so much, preoccupation, that not a lot of energy is left for her own career, her hobbies, the things that she loves to do, because she really feels at her wit's end. And so her question to me is, what the heck happened? I'm pretty good at relationships. Never before have I felt this way. Why is it that feeling bad and wondering when he'll call and questioning my own worth and confidence is worth that hit when he smiles at me or when the call finally does come through? Well, we're really unearthing a deeper part of what might have been an unmet need for her. So because I wanted to bring this example forward, I had a call with her to ask the more clarifying questions so that maybe you can find some insights and information that will help you in your loving relationships, single or in a long-term committed relationships. We can know that some of those, I'll call them attachment triggers, can fire off and at the end of the day have us question almost everything. And so for the client that we're talking about here, her deepest unmet need came from being a young little girl and sadly losing her mom at a very precarious time, a time when every one of us needs our mom and looks up to her for being tucked into bed and being asked, hey, how was your day at school? So much of that got taken away, taken offline, and it was raised by her dad, who worked a lot, who had issues with alcoholism, and a lot of spikes of anger when things got overwhelming. So she learned very quickly to tiptoe, not to mention too many of her own needs, and be very helpful, capable, and competent. Which is why you can see in her life today, she exhibits all of those characteristics professionally, very competent. People know her as balanced, someone that they can count on, very reliable, a person who gets things done. The first step was to really uncover what she was asking for in the relationship was not asking for the moon and the stars. We all want to feel safe, respected, loved, and have that natural ebb and flow, that give and take that makes any of us feel appreciated, heard, and we also have the ability to give. There's a bit of a nuance to how healthy love flows in a really solid and secure relationship. So the first step was to acknowledge what she was asking for wasn't too much, wasn't over the top at all. The second piece was to really look at how this connected to the body's memory of feeling like her natural needs were too much, feeling like the little bit of dad's attention that could come through just couldn't fill that cup. And so when she's now, decades later, dating this new guy, it unearthed so much of what hadn't had the chance to be processed. So if we look to attachment sciences to understand that most people are only as needy in their relationships as their deepest unmet need that is in the family history, that the body remembers. Think of it like a reference point that you just to continue to go back to. And now once the connection is made between, okay, I'm not asking for too much here. These are my natural needs and I shouldn't have to explain them or feel like I'm on this tenuous hook waiting for them to be met. And then the connection between the history that it matches up to. Then we have a little bit more clarity around, is this the right relationship for me? If I put out a call about, weekend plans and I don't hear back until Sunday late afternoon with, let's try next weekend, you have to begin to ask yourself, or it might be helpful to begin to ask yourself, is this really the relationship I see myself in long term? Now, if you find yourself in a long-term relationship, but you too can identify a lot of what this client question brings forward, we might want to take a look at the philosophy that I kind of stand by, which is love the one you're with. How can we use this relationship as a tool to unearth some of these relational patterns that live inside of you? How can we create more resilient boundaries, better communication, and really following that trigger as if it was a live wire in your body for the kind of healing work and that sort of loving attunement to yourself that you may need to go back to really understand those very early experiences that have this relationship pattern feel all too familiar. That allows the deeper work to be done. And certainly we can communicate with our partner as we move along this process. And if that's something you've already tried, perhaps it's best to do your own personal work with yourself, for yourself. And so I think we can gain a lot from understanding these different attachment patterns. Whether you have secure attachment, this idea that many, if not most, of your loving attunement needs were really met as a small child. Perhaps you relate more to anxious attachment, where you need to call and call again your partner. That sense of, did they just look at me this way? It must mean we're breaking up. Or I had one client tell me that his partner was away traveling on business, and he noticed when he called, it only rang twice and then went to voicemail. So he thought, I wonder if she pressed ignore on my call. And he called back just to see if it was a tech glitch, and then it went right to voicemail, feeling as if his partner is ignoring him, and maybe this is the end of the relationship, even though things had been going beautifully before the trip. Only to find out, 20 minutes later, when the girlfriend called to leave a message, to say, oh my gosh, my boss was standing right at my desk. I couldn't pick up the phone. And so sometimes when we've got that anxious attachment, we leap to these images in our mind of what must be true, what must be happening, because we're in that self-protection mode from not being hurt again. And we can easily understand what might have happened to any little boy or any little girl as a child to develop that anxious attachment pattern. There's also the avoidant attachment pattern. Are you in a relationship with someone who withdraws at the first sign of conflict? Or who might tend to be behind the computer screen or a book or any excuse to travel alone or carve out time for him or herself? A lot of times this can track back to mom or dad not being emotionally available or physically there. So that kind of learned behavior of, I'll just figure this out, I'm better off on my own anyway. And sometimes the moving towards closer intimate connection feels inundating and overwhelming to people with that attachment pattern. And so as we come to learn our own and our partners or our potential partners even more, it can save us so much of the heartache that we go through, maybe asking ourselves if we are in relationship already, can this really be the right partner for me? Or when we're in the early stages of dating, can this person really meet my natural, healthy needs in relationship? As we begin to ask ourselves very new questions, instead of what I see as the default, what do I need to do to change to make sure he or she doesn't leave? So much of how we find resolution in what can be so very painful in our deepest love relationships is to look at, where does this pattern of relating feel familiar? Where is it that I'm still looking to have my unmet needs met by this person? And the truth is, no matter how much our partner loves us, they're not able to fill what's been empty all these years. And it shouldn't be their responsibility. Much of it is our own. Much of it is learning how we can come back home to ourselves. The more we know ourselves, the more authentically we can show up in our relationships. And the more we can understand our partner's attachment pattern, the less we can take personally, and the more we're able to hold on to the bigger picture and make strides towards the relationship we truly do want. So thank you so much for my client who sent in the question, and I hope all of you listening could take something meaningful back into your own relationship or back into the relationship that you're looking to start. If you have any questions, if this has sparked some interest and you'd like to speak to me, we can certainly set up an introductory call so that you can explore how learning about the influences of our early family history and our earliest imprints in life can transform your everyday, the life you're living now. So thanks again for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.